Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, May 9th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 electoral map based off the current polling data that we have right now. So I know a lot of the times I do analyze elections and I predict them, but this time I'm going to be letting the data decide for me. So essentially, I have countless Real Clear Politics tabs open with the overall averages for each individual state for at least almost all the states that are currently up for grabs. There isn't a lot of polling data in some states, surprisingly, including states such as Ohio, which has only had 3 polls since, I think, September 2019. So there's definitely a need for an update in some of these polls, but they definitely should give us a little bit of insight as to how the general public is feeling in each of these states. So the reason why I have some of these states as likely, this is based off the margin map in 2016. South Carolina and Alaska were likely Republican states, and that just means less than 15%, but between 5 and 15. Oregon, New Mexico, New Jersey, Delaware, Connecticut, and Rhode Island also were likely states from 2016. So the rest of the states are obviously safe, and then the remaining gray states are the ones that I would consider to be competitive. That puts a number of 230 competitive electoral votes for the 2020 election. These were all competitive in 2016 as well. So let's start off with some of the easier states, the states that we know are going to vote a certain way, or at least the way that I characterize them in almost every single prediction. Virginia is definitely becoming a lot more solid for the Democrats. Biden is ahead by 7.3% in terms of polling data, so that's enough to characterize it as likely. If we move over to the state of Texas, which should be a reliably Republican state, in 2016, Trump led by 12% in terms of polling data, ended up winning by 9%, so didn't do as well as the polls suggested, but right now he only leads by 1.4%. So something definitely has changed in the state of Texas. This is enough to characterize it as a lean Republican state. May actually end up in the tilt column if it doesn't change in favor of, if things don't change in favor of Trump, just because the current trajectory of the nation doesn't necessarily benefit Donald Trump, just considering looking at the unemployment rate, which is temporary, but the state of the economy isn't going to help Trump either. If you look at the state of Ohio, this was a state that Trump was supposed to win by 3.5%, ended up winning it by 8.1%, so vastly outperformed the polling data. But as of right now, we haven't had any polls since July of 2019 in Ohio, one of the most crucial states for the 2020 election. Obama won it both times. Trump won it by an even larger margin than Obama's 2008 margin, right now with an overall average of Biden plus 6. So that actually puts Ohio in the likely Democratic column, even though realistically, we all know it's not going to end up that way. As for New Mexico, it shows a Biden with an 8-point lead. Again, this one wasn't covered much. It had solider victories when Obama was on the ballot, but Hillary Clinton still won it by a pretty solid margin, despite losing the overall election. So that one I'm actually not going to adjust because it remains in the likely column. As for New Hampshire, this is another state that should be competitive. Clinton only won it by 0.3%, and it was a narrow RCP average, so she narrowly underperformed what the polling data suggested, but Trump almost won the state of New Hampshire. Obama won it by 9.6% in 2008 and 5.6% in 2012, and it looks like it might return to that number with a Biden plus, rounded 5-point lead, but it characterizes it only as I'm closing out these tabs, as a lean state. As for Nevada, this is a state that Hillary Clinton narrowly won, but Obama did have pretty solid victories here. Trump was expected to win the state of Nevada. Nevada always overestimates Republicans in terms of polling data. Trump ended up losing the state of Nevada, and Biden is expected to carry it by 4%. So we likely could actually expect him to carry it by larger than that, but that's enough to put it in the lean Democratic column. As we move over to the state of Maine, this is a state that was not too solid for Hillary Clinton. It was expected to be. She led by 4.5%, so it was still supposed to be closer than 2016. But in 2012, Obama won it by 15.3%, and in 2008, 17.3%. So it was not supposed to be, a close state in 2016, but there was never a point where Hillary Clinton led larger than 10%. So Maine may be changing demographics, or it's just that Donald Trump was able to appeal to them in a way that other candidates weren't. But for right now, Maine pretty solidly goes to Biden at this point, enough to put it in the likely column, Maine at large. I want to see if there's any Maine 2nd District polling data. I don't think I see any. But we'll get back to that after I go back and look at the electoral map. but we're just going to leave that one blank and then just fill it in if I can't find any data for it. But Iowa, this is a state Trump won by 9.5% again. Still expected to have a narrow victory here, a last-minute surge for him in Iowa. Hillary Clinton rarely ever led in the state of Iowa. She started early on, leading in July. Then it came extremely close, and then Trump just started taking it away in Iowa. Ended up winning it by 9.5%. When you think about the demographics in Iowa, realistically, I don't understand why Obama was able to carry it. Obama definitely had a way bigger appeal to white working class voters than even rural voters than Hillary Clinton had. And I think that was partially one of the main reasons why Trump did so well in the state of Iowa in 2016. But he's expected to win it by 4.6%. So underperforming in a sense, but still a victory. It's a winner-take-all system. Does not matter, to be honest, the margins. Trump won the 2016 election theoretically, or no, actually by less than 1% in the 3 Rust Belt states. But if you look at the electoral map, 306 electoral votes to 232, it looks somewhat similar to a blowout margin. In Georgia, Trump is actually expected to outperform his 2016 performance. He was leading by 4.8% in terms of polling data. Hillary Clinton narrowly led in Georgia. I think this was more of a pipe dream for Democrats to be even competitive in Georgia, considering the fact that Romney had a 7.8% victory. But Trump won it by 5.1%, and he's actually expected to outperform it. Then again, we haven't had any polling data since February 2020 and December 2019, but at the end of the day, it's still enough to put it in the likely Republican column in favor of Donald Trump. As for Minnesota, this is a state that was extremely close in 2016 despite not being expected to. The only poll that really called it was Gravis, which showed a tie, but Clinton led by 10%, 8%, 7%, 6%. And, Trump had a last-minute surge in the Rust Belt in the last 2 weeks of the election, actually. Hillary Clinton went from a 7-point lead nationwide down to a 2-point lead in the matter of 14 days. If you take a look at Minnesota, it definitely was part of the surge in favor of Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton still narrowly won it. But at the end of the day, no one really expected it to be that close. And as of right now, the only poll that we have shows Biden ahead by 12%. So that puts it in the likely Democratic column. If we look, so we have Georgia and Virginia. So Colorado is the next state. Colorado is a pretty solid Democratic state. Obama won it both times. Hillary Clinton won it in 2016. And, she was expected to lose Colorado at one point in time. It was very narrow as we reached up to the election, but she ended up winning it by 4.9%, and it didn't swing with the rest of the states on the nationwide level. Sure, they lost 0.5% of voters, but if you look at the other states, the Rust Belt, for the Democrats, they lost 10% of their voters, or in some cases, 15% or 13% for the case of Maine. But Colorado was pretty solid for the Democrats. It's been pretty solid for them consistently. So Colorado goes into the likely Democratic column. So as you can see, Joe Biden is inching his way closer to winning the election without having to go through any super tough states. Now we're going to hit the main ones that are super important and super crucial to both of these campaigns. So in 2016, Trump was expected to carry the state of Arizona by 4%. He underperformed and won it by 3.5%. Hillary Clinton led actually for the final 2 weeks, a final month of the campaign, up until the final 2 weeks, in which it got extremely in favor of Donald Trump. We saw a 5-point swing on the national average in 2016 that ended up favoring Donald Trump enough so that it pushed him slightly over the top in 2016. For the state of Arizona right now, it's more competitive than it was. It's been pretty consistent for Joe Biden's victory. Almost every poll showed Joe Biden ahead. And, with the 2018 Democratic win in both the House seats in Arizona and the Senate seat, and an expected Senate seat victory for the Democrats here, it is very possible that Biden does win by a 4.4% margin. That puts it in the lean column, but it's narrowing over into the likely column, which is really interesting to me, considering how this state wouldn't even be talked about 8 years prior to the 2020 election. Now for North Carolina, this is a big one, 15 electoral votes. In 2016, Trump had a 1% lead according to the RCP average. Hillary Clinton, dominated in North Carolina for the last month of the campaign season and ended up losing it by 3.7%. Again, with this last-minute push, you can see right here, James Comey reopens the email investigation. Not saying this is the only thing that attributed to Hillary Clinton's loss, as a fundamentally flawed candidate for the 2016 election, or at least in perception. Obviously there were a number of things that contributed to her loss, but you definitely can't ignore the fact that the Comey investigation rapidly sped up the Republican return to Donald Trump. But she was leading, and then Trump all of a sudden ended up with a 1% lead, ended up winning by 3.7%. But right now it shows Trump with a narrow tilt lead of 0.3% in the state of North Carolina. As we move over to Pennsylvania, a state Trump won in 2016, Joe Biden leads by 6.5%. That one goes into the likely column. I mean, he was born here. Realistically, I could see that happening. I don't think we're going to get any data from Maine's 2nd District or Nebraska's 2nd District, so I'm just going to go ahead and, narrowly fill it in with whichever party I expect to carry Maine's 2nd District. So let's go ahead and do that. Trump at 202, Biden at 276. In the state of Michigan, again, another Trump state from 2016, both Pennsylvania and Michigan both expected Hillary Clinton to win based off polling data, but it was within the margin of error that it swung in favor of Donald Trump. So it was still a calculated error that was factored in, and it was always possible, but this is definitely not within the margin of error. A 5.5% lead puts it in the likely column in favor of Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and fix this real quick. In favor of Joe Biden. And then the state of Florida with a surprising lead for the Democrats. In 2016, Trump led here by 0.2%. It was always going back and forth. Hillary Clinton pretty much led here for the majority of the campaign season. But at the end of the day, Trump won it by 1.2%. And as of right now, Biden leads it by 3.2%. So that's enough to put it in the lean Democratic column, which is really surprising to me considering the fact that I don't even think Florida is going to go to Joe Biden in the general election. And for the state of Wisconsin, this is a state that's actually way closer than where it was in 2016. It was actually the most Democratic state according to polling data for the Rust Belt states, and Trump ended up winning it by 0.7%. And, if you look, Hillary Clinton never really faltered in the state of Wisconsin. Her smallest lead was a 4-point lead, but she ended up losing it. But the RCP average showed her ahead by 6.5%. And Remington Research, a Republican insider poll, showed Clinton ahead by 8%. Prior to Election Day, on Election Day, actually, or 2 days before Election Day, whenever they held this poll. And she ended up losing it. And right now, Joe Biden actually is expected to narrowly win it. But if Trump outperforms or just swings it as much as he did in 2016, that state definitely would go to Donald Trump according to those numbers. So this pretty much reflects what we saw in the 2012 presidential election minus Maine's 2nd District and the state of Iowa and the addition for the Democratic Party of Arizona. Pretty much other than that, when you take a look at this map, it shows a pretty solid lead for Joe Biden. If he wins with this type of map, he will have a mandate as he proceeds into 2021. And if you look at the states that are competitive, Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Iowa, a lot of those Republican incumbents that are up for re-election in 2022 or Republican representatives are going to see shifts in their state where Joe Biden may have, or the Democrats may have, a presence in a state that they previously didn't. Arizona, 4 years ago, it was expected to go to Donald Trump. He ended up winning it. And then 2 years after, they're electing a Democrat to the Senate for the first time in a long time. And if you take a look at the other states, again, if these are the margins, Joe Biden will have a mandate. Sure, Donald Trump did have a mandate going into 2016. Democrats had to revisit the Rust Belt states and say, how did we mess up these states after 3 decades of winning here consecutively, despite losing numerous elections while carrying the Rust Belt? There are a bunch of questions asked for the Democratic Party, and at the same time, some of those questions still haven't been answered, and the Democratic Party may not be focusing on the Rust Belt as much as they need to be because they are pretty sure Joe Biden is going to carry it. But according to this polling data, which they definitely shouldn't rely on as their only source of information, but they are generally pretty accurate. There were only 2 states that were actually only 1 state that was fundamentally incorrect, and that was the state of Wisconsin. It was outside the margin of error in terms of its swing for Donald Trump, but the other states, Michigan and Pennsylvania and Nevada, were all within the margin of error for switching either over to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. So the finalized polling data map gives Joe Biden 331 electoral votes and Donald Trump 202. That just looks really off to me. I feel like I'm missing something, but I may not be because there's 538 electoral votes. That just looks really weird. I feel like I'm missing 1 state. You know what? Someone's going to catch it and someone's going to say something. I don't know where these toss-up 5 electoral votes are coming from. But anyways, yeah, I'm actually so confused. Am I missing it? I'm just looking right at it and it's not there. Whatever. Okay, cool. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all tomorrow.